Absolutely.
It's not like these are conservative.
Absolutely, that's my
These
argument.
are not conservative
Jake,
Republicans. These aren't conservative Republicans who are concerned about Donald Trump. They're not. That's not right.
All of these.
Welcome back, Patriots. We have an interview with JD Vance and Jake Tapper of CNN. And what I've been told is JD wipes the floor with this guy. Let's roll it.
Senator Vance,
come out.
Good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let me ask you, obviously, Trump's former chief of staff, General John Kelly, was alarmed, he says, by what he heard when Trump said he wanted to use the National Guard or the Pentagon to go after the enemy within, Americans with whom he disagrees, including the Pelosi's, Adam Schiff. And then he gave an interview. He said that Trump, quote, certainly falls into the general definition of fascist, that he is, quote, certainly an authoritarian, admires people who are dictators. You've called him a disgruntled former employee. But why shouldn't Americans out there listen to somebody who worked closely with Trump, worked with him longer than you've worked with him?
Jesus, enough with the monologue. Let's get to the question, Jake.
Retired four-star Marine general, served his country honorably, who is conservative, who says he agrees with Trump on most policies, but is worried about this aspect of Trump.
So let me say two things in response. So first of all, a lot of what John Kelly, pretty much all of what John Kelly accuses Donald Trump of saying, there were other people in the room, Mike Pence's former chief of staff, for example, who've explicitly said Donald Trump never said those things, right?
Bingo.
So one, on
Mike Pence, the guy who's not going to support Trump because...
Mike Pence's former chief of staff said that Donald Trump didn't say those things, right? So that's number one. Number two, I actually think there's an interesting conversation here to have, Jake, which is why does John Kelly not support Donald Trump? It's about policy. It's actually not about personality.
He says he agrees with Trump on most policy.
No.
He agrees with Trump on most policy. He disagrees with Trump on how Trump views his role and his and the fascism and the authoritarianism.
I don't buy that, Jake.
What? That doesn't even make sense. And yeah, JD, you shouldn't buy it. Let's say you knew nothing about what the hell was just said, right? Other than you're saying Kelly says that Donald Trump is a fascist, that he supports dictators, he's authoritarian, all these things. How can you sit there and say that he agrees with Trump's policies, but at the same time is calling him a fascist, a dictator, an authoritarian? Because you can't be a dictator or an authoritarian and then agree with somebody's policies, but call them those very negative things and say that, well, you disagree with that fascism, authoritarianism. Does that make sense? That doesn't go hand in hand. It doesn't make sense, Jake. Not at all.
I don't buy that, because if you actually look at John Kelly, at folks like Liz Cheney, the fundamental disagreement they have with Donald Trump is, even though they say that they're conservative in the sense that they want America to get involved in a ton of ridiculous military conflicts. They want America to police the world, and Donald Trump wasn't.
John Kelly lost a son in Afghanistan. Why are you saying that he, I've never heard John Kelly say whether he supports of Iraq or Afghanistan.
And I honor his son's sacrifice, and I honor his family's sacrifice. That doesn't mean he's not wrong about policy.
What specifically are you talking about? What has he said?
Is your argument that a person...
Isn't it crazy that the first interruption on JD Vance happened 1 minute and 15 seconds into the interview, and here we are just 2 minutes in, and the constant interruption? I mean, it's typical with these Democrats, these left-lean cable news sites like CNN that still says they're unbiased or the most trustworthy news source out there, which is a bunch of bullshit. It's just remarkable to me that you never see this type of line of questioning on Kamala Harris from MSNBC. You never see it from CNN. You never see it from these legacy media sites like ABC, NBC, CBS doing the exact same thing to Kamala like they're doing here to JD Vance. It's remarkable. Completely biased.
Person who lost his son in Afghanistan can't be wrong about public policy.
I'm asking
then
you,
why bring that up? Let's talk about public policy, because I've never criticized his service or his son's service.
I brought it up because you're acting as if he is pro-war, and I've never heard him say whether or not he supported the war in Afghanistan or the war in Iraq. He was a general carrying out orders.
Because I know John Kelly's worldview, and I know the people who have attacked Donald Trump the most vociferously on foreign policy. They'll say, well, he's a dictator, when what they really mean is they won't listen. Donald Trump wouldn't listen to the leadership of the military when they wanted him to start ridiculous conflicts. That is a consistent theme. And I think that there's a big thing going on in American politics. It's a very interesting theme in American foreign policy, where a lot of former members of the Pentagon bureaucracy, a lot of old neoconservatives, they have a fundamental difference with Donald Trump on the question of peace and war. I believe Donald Trump is the candidate of peace. I think the record supports that. But the reason these guys go after him so vociferously, I don't think that it's about his personality, Jake. I think that it's about they don't like that Donald Trump said no when a lot of them wanted to start a ridiculous war.
Well, you're ascribing worldviews, I think, based on gut. I can't really tell where you're coming from on it. There's no evidence.
Based on people that I've talked to in the Trump administration,
John
about
Bolton,
what John Kelly wanted to do, John Bolton, Liz Cheney, these people have a consistent
John Kelly was at the Department of Homeland Security, and then he was chief of staff. He was not weighing in. I don't even know what you're talking about. But let me ask you something about John Kelly specifically, because you said the other day.
Well, Jake, we actually don't know what the hell you're talking about, because you're saying that John Kelly doesn't support Trump because he believes Trump to be a dictator or an authoritarian or whatever. But then at the same time, John Kelly agrees with Donald Trump's policy. How the hell does that make sense, Jake? So we don't know what the hell you're talking about. So don't come at JD Vance like you know what you're talking about.
Quote, I guarantee John Kelly talked to somebody on Kamala Harris's campaign beforehand, before he did this interview. Now, I've spoken with people in John Kelly's circle, and I've spoken with people in the Kamala Harris campaign. They say there's been no communication the entire time. So where did that come from?
Well, Kamala Harris also said that she meets with Joe Biden every single day, but yet we have Axios and other reports coming out from staffers inside the White House that they haven't even talked to each other at lengths of like 3 months before. Furthermore, she's also the one that says the border's secure when it wasn't secure. It's also the Biden-Harris administration that said that they're going to be the most transparent administration that's ever existed, but then comes out and actually lies about certain things and covers up other things like the classified document scandal that we saw from the Biden-Harris administration. They've also sat there and utilized the DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to go in front of Congress and say that the border's secure. But you're right. Yeah, we're supposed to believe everything that comes out of the Harris camp. Yeah.
I'm highly skeptical of that, Jake. You know the way that these attacks work. You know the way that these people are often vetted by a campaign.
So you made it up
before something goes out there. No, I said that the American media and the American Democratic Party apparatus works a certain way. If it comes out that John Kelly never even spoke with a person in the Kamala Harris orbit, then I'm happy. You're telling me that based on secondhand conversations with John Kelly. And it's interesting. We've now spent, Jake, 3 minutes talking about John Kelly. If it is true that he never spoke with anyone in Kamala Harris's orbit, I'm happy to apologize to John Kelly for misstating how he delivered this news to the Atlantic magazine. But let's talk about who did he deliver this news to? To Jeffrey Goldberg, a guy who lied the United States into the Iraq War, which led to the deaths of millions of innocent Arabs and thousands of innocent Americans. You don't go to that guy if you don't have a particular ideological motive. I think that's what's going on. If I'm wrong, I'm happy to say that I'm wrong.
I think it's interesting that you...
Damn. I don't think people realize how great of a spin that was of JD right there, of not only attributing the policies of Kelly, but also attaching it to, well, basically, why did he go to this individual that supported all these wars? Meaning attaching the fact that John Kelly is going to a guy that supports wars, and also connecting it to the fact of what Jake Tapper says isn't true of the Cheneys and the Kellys supporting the war machine. What a phenomenal thing JD just did. And it totally went over this idiot's head. He doesn't have a freaking clue what just happened to him because he's a knucklehead. That was a remarkable thing by JD, by the way.
You think that a magazine writer lied the American people into war?
Well, he encouraged it. He wrote stories that were dishonest.
He wrote a story about the gassing of the Kurds in I forget if it was the Atlantic or the New Yorker, but I'm actually referring to John Kelly talking to the New York Times.
He wrote stories, by the way, where he took what intelligence officials in the American Pentagon bureaucracy said and wrote it as the gospel truth. And this highlights the entire point that I'm making about Trump's foreign policy, is this is a guy who wants to use American troops sparingly. He wants peace through strength. It's why his foreign policy was so successful during his first term. It's all the same people who were wrong about Iraq. They were wrong about the quagmire in Afghanistan. They were wrong about Syria. They were wrong about everything. And now they're coming after Donald Trump because he actually has a realistic and cautious foreign policy.
He had to spell it out for him. Did you guys see that? He had to spell it out for the idiot here on the screen.
Talking about people who worked for Donald Trump in his first administration. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about not just John Kelly,
We know that, you idiot. You've already listed it out in that minute-long monologue that we all had to listen to at the beginning of the interview.
But Mark Milley, who was the Trump-appointed chairman of the Joint Chiefs of
Who
Staff,
disobeyed Trump's direct orders on troop redeployments in Syria.
and I'm talking about the guy that had your job.
A massive violation of his constitutional oath, by the way.
I'm talking about the guy that had your job before Donald Trump's supportive crowd wanted to hang him, Vice President Mike Pence, who said, as you know, that Trump put himself before the Constitution. I'm talking about General Mattis, also Secretary of Defense in Trump's administration. I'm talking about Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense, who told me that Trump does have fascistic tendencies. John Bolton, H.R. McMaster, Alyssa Farah Griffin.
Okay, Jake,
These are Trump administration officials.
Listen to every Trump administration official? You know, one reason why Kamala Harris doesn't have as many people criticizing her is because she doesn't fire people who fail. That's why we haven't had a real audit of the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, is because Kamala Harris protects failures in government. Donald Trump fires them. And I'd much rather have the president who fires people who screw up. Now, Jake, no, this is an important point.
Kamala Harris. You did not fire Mike Pence.
Kamala Harris.
He did not fire Mark Milley.
Kamala Harris.
He did not fire John.
He fired a lot of those people.
Jesus, dude. JD's just wiping the floor with this guy in 7 minutes, and he can't. He did fire, but. JD, keep it up, brother.
Jake, and he did because they weren't doing their job. But this is the thing, Jake. We've now spent 5 minutes talking about people in Donald Trump's staff
who think he's not fit for office.
He fired.
Who think he's not fit for office.
Oh, they didn't think he was unfit for office until they had a falling out with him because he fired them. And we're not talking about the public policy.
Well,
Can we talk about how Americans can't afford groceries?
We're actually
Can we talk about the fact that Americans can't afford the cost of housing? Can we talk about the fact that a lot of people out there in Erie, Pennsylvania, they're the ones who suffer and die when people like Mark Esper and Mark Milley don't obey the commander-in-chief's orders.
We're talking about Donald Trump.
Isn't it rich that CNN's trying to lecture us on who's fit to hold office when it was the Democrats that sat there and voted in a guy that was cognitively disabled? And the fact that he couldn't sit there and walk up a flight of stairs correctly, he actually hit a golf ball backwards. Joe Biden was looking for dead people in the crowd, claiming that he was taking photos with people at events that were never there in the first place. This guy was actually having full-on conversations and seeing dead people that had been passed away for 40 years. So it's so rich that the CNNs, the MSNBCs, all these media outlets are telling us who's fit to hold office. All the while, they're the ones that were complicit in covering up the cognitive disability of the Biden-Harris administration. It's a really an unbelievable thing.
And what he says.
Yes.
And Donald Trump says.
And you'd much rather talk about what Donald Trump allegedly said than what Donald Trump did in office.
I'm talking about
what he did in office, Jake.
What he said publicly.
1.5%
he wants to use
inflation.
The military to go after the enemy within, which is the American people.
He did not say that, Jake.
The enemy within?
He said that he was going to send the military after the American people. Show me the quote where he said
he was going to. He said the enemy within.
He said far left lunatics. He's talking about
the
people
Pelosi's
rioting
and Schiff.
He's talking about.
Wow, Jake's calling Pelosi and Adam Schiff and Chuck Schumer far left lunatics. Yes. Oh, and by the way, Donald Trump's not going after them. He was literally on Joe Rogan's podcast just like 2 days ago saying, I could have gone after Hillary Clinton and I didn't do it, nor do I think you should do that. But it's the Democrat Party that's going after the political opponents. Again, it's rich. The fact that they're going to sit there and tell us who is cognitively cognizant to lead the country, all the while they sat there and supported Joe Biden. And now they're going to sit there and tell us what Donald Trump truly meant when he's already come out in the clear of stating what he truly meant. All the while Donald Trump says, hey, I'm not going after my political opponents. And he's saying that he's going to go after his political opponents, all the while that they sat there and went after their political opponents, being the Democrat Party went after Republicans, specifically Donald Trump and others. Unbelievable.
About people rioting after the election. I think
the Pelosi's were rioting after the election?
He said
Adam Schiff was rioting after the election?
You're using two separate phrases. He said about using the military that far left lunatics, people who riot in the wake of an election, people who burn down American cities in the summer of 2020, yes, we should have a federal law enforcement
response. This is what he said to Joe Rogan on Friday. The enemy within that he wants the military to go after.
No, this is
the enemy within, a bigger problem than Kim Jong-un.
The second part.
We have people that are really bad people that I really think want to make this country unsuccessful. That's who the enemy within.
And did he say that he wants to use the military against those people?
He said he
Here's
wants
the
to use
game.
the military to go after the enemy within.
Here's the game that you're playing. He said
I'm
that
not playing a game.
No.
This is, yeah, you are, dude. This is really disgusting stuff from CNN, and I'm not surprised whatsoever. The enemy within is those people that want to go not just burn down our buildings and commit heinous crimes, but also he's primarily talking about the illegal immigrants like MS-13, these violent gang members. These people are bringing in fentanyl, these drug cartels, killing your children, these illegal immigrants that are raping your children and murdering them. By the way, notice that I'm not saying Democrat children or Democrat people. I'm saying the Democrats are bringing in illegal immigrants in the span of tens of millions at times through the Biden-Harris administration that are murdering our women and children, that are freaking raping women and children, regardless if you're what party you're from, you're an American. This is what they're doing. That's an enemy. I'm sorry. Someone that's going out raping and murdering our children and bringing in drugs and bringing in terrorists into our country. Yeah, that's an enemy. It is.
No, can I answer the question, please? He said that he wanted to use the military to go after far left lunatics who were rioting, and he also called them the enemy within. He separately, in a totally different context, in a totally different conversation, said that Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff were threats to this country.
Were the enemy within.
Were
the enemy within. He said they were the enemy within.
So every time he uses the exact same phrase, we assume that he uses
I don't
the
know. I
military?
don't throw around the term of enemy within to talk about using the military against going American people.
And you're asking his vice president, but you won't let me answer the question. I'm telling you that Donald Trump has said, and I agree with him, that we should use the U.S. military to go after
Americans.
People who riot, who burn down our cities.
And this was what John Kelly was.
National Guard.
This was what John Kelly was alarmed by: the idea of using the U.S. military to go after Americans. That's what he said.
Donald Trump never said Americans writ large. You keep on putting words in his mouth and my
Are they
mouth.
or are they not Americans?
Far left people who commit acts of violence, who riot. And
Now
I
you're
don't
doing
care.
a very narrow definition of what he said, which is not what he said.
care.
That's not what he.
Now you're using a very narrow definition of what he said. By the way, just switch that word narrow out for specific. You're using a very specific definition of what he said. And JD's right here. By the way, JD's going, I'm his vice president. You just said that you didn't know what Donald Trump meant by it, Jake. You literally just said that about 15 seconds ago. And so JD Vance, as somebody who's being interviewed, well, clearly, I guess, debated in this situation, is telling you this is what he meant by it. And you're telling then JD what Donald Trump meant by it. That is some insane shit, man.
He said, but let me ask you the bigger
He did
point.
say that, Jake. He did. He said that he wanted to use the U.S. military. Let me clarify.
Go after far left lunatics, yes. And then he
go
also
after
added
people who were rioting and looting.
And
he
added,
never said.
He added
he
Schiff,
never said.
and then he added the Pelosi's.
He never. He
and then
said
he added people that don't want the country to succeed.
He said that Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi he used in a separate context in a separate conversation. And what you're doing is you're smashing two totally different conversations.
Fox asked him about this last week, and he didn't take issue with it. He said the enemy within is the biggest threat to this country.
But did he say the enemy within, that he's going to use the military against Nancy Pelosi? Donald Trump offered Nancy Pelosi the National Guard on January the 6th, and according to private emails, she rejected it.
So let's talk about things that he wants to do that
All of a sudden, yeah, now he wants to change the script. Yeah, here we go.
that are feeding into this concern that people like John Kelly and General Mattis and General Milley have. He said on Friday, Special Counsel Jack Smith should get thrown out of the country. He's threatened to arrest election officials who cheated. We know that he believes a lot of people cheated.
He's threatening election officials who cheated. Wait. He's threatening people that broke the law with getting, thrown behind bars or some sort of violation or some sort of fine for breaking the law. Holy shit.
Cheated that did not cheat.
Yes, if you violate the law, you should be arrested. Yes.
No one disagrees with that, but he's talking about.
Apparently you do, based on the way you're asking the question.
No, based on the fact that he's accused people that didn't break the law of breaking the law when it comes to the election. And if you want to revisit that, I'm happy to. But Liz Cheney, he said, should be put before a war tribunal. None of that sounds fascist to you at all?
No, of course it doesn't. Of
Putting
course
Liz
it
Cheney
doesn't.
before a military tribunal?
First of all, I don't buy into the premise of what you're saying, Jake, because I just on things that I know that he said, on things that I know that he said, you're imputing things, you're taking words out of context, you're taking two separate conversations and pretending that they were made at the exact same time. So I'm rejecting the premise of your question. I frankly don't believe what you're saying about Donald Trump's words. If you'd like to put up a clip and actually put him in context, I think the American people would realize that Donald Trump is a hell of a lot more reasonable than the people like Liz Cheney who would like to lie us into war. Now, Jake, we also have to remember, I mean, step back a little bit. Well, ask yourself a basic question about network integrity. You guys talked about the Russia hoax nonstop.
The FBI was investigating it. The FBI was investigating it, and we covered them.
And so you took the words of unnamed FBI agents and put them on your network as if they were the gospel truth. You did it again and again. A viewer of your network would have believed that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin conspired in 2016.
No.
That was totally and preposterously false.
No.
Well, that's
what you just said is false.
No, Jake, you're a fucking liar, and you're getting called out for your bullshit. So is your entire media apparatus for the lies that they pushed. Well done, JD. I'm loving this.
We covered an FBI investigation. I don't know why you want to talk about the FBI investigation.
You covered it in a way that gave credence to anonymous sources' accusations. You did it yourself. Your network did it, Jake. But again, can we talk about the issues that Americans care most about?
I'm talking about things that Donald Trump has said.
Yes.
If you have an issue
Kamala
with whether or
Harris,
not he's talking about the economy enough, that's between you and your running mate. I'm talking about things he has said this week.
Every single rally that he does, he talks about how he wants to unleash American energy so we can lower the cost of groceries. He talks about the fact that housing has become unaffordable. He talks about the wide open border, Jake. Kamala Harris and her allies, you know, it's interesting. Kamala Harris and her media allies, and I would put CNN in this category. You guys,
they wouldn't.
You guys seem to care.
I'll tell you that they wouldn't.
Well, they should watch your network more because you guys seem to care more about Donald Trump's past than the future of the American people. We're running this campaign on making the American dream.
I'm specifically asking about how Donald Trump is going to be president in the future should he win, and then we're being told
he's going to pursue economic policies that lower the cost of groceries and make life more affordable again. He talks about it every single day on the campaign trail, and so do I. What you're talking about is an anonymously sourced story, or one guy
nothing anonymously sourced,
or who one guy who is a disgruntled employee.
I told you 10
other people pushed back against him and said that what he said was dishonest. So why don't we talk about the policy that's affecting American citizens and not what Donald Trump allegedly said, according to one guy who's pissed off because he got fired by Donald Trump?
I did.
Because Jake Tapper and CNN are in the business of not being unbiased. They're in the business of sitting there and rubbing the shoulders and the gross ass feet of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the rest of the Democrat Party. I mean, this entire cable network is completely bought off. And it says so right here. And by the way, Jake is so far gone. He is so far lost it that he actually can't recognize the fact that JD was attributing to his one specific question here that's allegedly of what Donald Trump said, even though it's from different places, different conversations of time, and wrapping it up with a nice little bow on top, making it seem like it's all from one conversation, one specific statement. When JD's saying, well, hey, you know what? If you're going to sit there and want to talk about things that Donald Trump said, he's also talked about the economy. He's also talked about foreign policy. He's also talked about how he's going to make America great again. He's also talked about how he's going to fix the border. He's also talked about how he's going to drop energy prices by 50% in the first year. He's also talked about the fact that Kamala Harris allowed millions of people into the country and how he's going to resolve that. He's also talked about this, and that. But you don't want to talk about those things. You want to talk about some nut job that used to work for Donald Trump that lied about something. And you know what? If it was so big, if it was so important, why the fuck did he wait 4 years plus to sit there and reveal this bombshell report that you want to sit there and claim is pure truth when it's a he said, she said, and you don't have a clear fuck what the hell you're talking about?
Didn't bring up any of the things that he said. He said, I didn't bring up.
Brought up John Kelly, and that I just described.
I brought up John Kelly's view of Donald Trump. I didn't bring up John Kelly talking about what Donald Trump said about Hitler's generals. I didn't bring that up. I talked about John Kelly's view of Trump based on something Trump has been saying in the last week. So that's what I asked about.
So John Kelly makes accusations that are rejected by 5 people.
Again, you're talking about something I didn't bring up.
I think that may be implicated.
Well, you didn't bring it up. He had to bring it up. The fact that you sat there and are using a source to spend an entire interview on of one specific individual in the same way that JD brought up the fact that you spread the Russia hoax as an entire network based on one individual that was paid off by the FBI that was then come out later on saying, hey, it was an entire hoax, what Donald Trump was saying for years, but yet your CNN, your network was saying that Donald Trump's lying. Why does he think it's a witch hunt? We know it's real. And by the way, it was the same thing with all this legacy media and cable media sites that were saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was also Russian disinformation, misinformation, and that you had these intelligence communities or committees or individuals, however you want to phrase it, 51 of them signing off on a letter saying that the Hunter Biden laptop wasn't real, that it was Russian disinformation and misinformation. So JD's right here, Jake. You're a complete liar. liar. You're a fraud. You continue to espouse lies, and that's why nobody trusts your entire network, the cable news sites, as well as legacy media anymore.
Implicates his overall judgment. And I think the fact that he has a worldview that's so oppositional to peace and prosperity suggests that he's not an honest arbiter here. This is not a guy, John Kelly, going to brag to Jeffrey Goldberg, who is interested in the American truth or is interested in telling an honest account of Donald Trump. He's a guy with an axe to grind because Donald Trump fired him and disagreed with him on policy.
So all those 10 people, including the former vice president, Mike Pence, all of these people have this horribly damaged worldview, and they're all just going after Donald Trump because they want to send people into war? That's really your argument?
That's so insane. Okay. Just to give you like an idea, the executive branch, when you're put in the office, you have to like implement like 10,000 plus people. The executive branch is wildly big. And so it's like working for Walmart, right? You're sitting there in the upper echelon running Walmart, and you have like 10 disgruntled employees out of like tens of thousands that are upset, that got let go. They're pissed because they lost their job because they're psychos and nut jobs. And they come out and put out a hit piece that's a he said, she said. And yeah, we're supposed to believe them. Not only that, but out of the thousands of people that work for the executive branch, there's also more people coming out than actually said, hey, it's not real. Don't believe this guy. I was in the room. And we're supposed to believe you, Jake? What?
Absolutely.
It's not like these are conservative.
Absolutely, that's my
These
argument.
are not conservative
Jake,
Republicans. These aren't conservative Republicans who are concerned about Donald Trump. They're not. That's not right.
All of these people, Jake, they came into office thinking that they could control Donald Trump. That when he said he wanted peace in the world,
Mike Pence thought he could control Donald Trump.
Yes, he did. And when he found out that when he found out that he couldn't, they all turned on Donald Trump, and a lot of them got fired. And we're running, and we're trying to staff the government with people who are going to govern according to principles of peace and prosperity.
Let me ask you.
They're pissed off about it.
Let me ask you, because we're being told that we're over.
Yeah. One more question, because we have to go to this rally.
You are running to be vice president of the United States.
Of course.
And there is a 50-50 chance, maybe better, I don't know, that you're going to succeed.
You don't know a lot of shit, man. Clearly, you don't know a lot of shit. Look, I'm all for like an open discussion and having questions, but all you've done here is completely try to slander President Trump without asking any questions about what the top question, right, would be about the economy and immigration. Isn't that any of that?
Succeed. Are you running to be vice president of the United States, or are you running to be vice president of the red states? Because if you win, and there's a decent chance you will, you're going to be vice president of childless cat ladies. You're going to be vice president of legal Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio. You're going to be their vice president too. Are you running to do that?
Does anybody, hand to God, I mean, what a waste of fucking time. I don't mean to cuss, well, I guess I do. What a waste of time. What a stupid question. Really?
Of course, I'm running to be the vice president of all Americans. I'm running because I want people to be able to afford a good life in this country. You know how I grew up. You know that I grew up in a family where things were often tough. I want, whether you're in a blue state or a red state, whether you're going to vote for Trump or you're going to vote for Harris, I want you to be able to have a good life in this country. But what's not going to happen with the broken leadership in Washington, D.C. Let me give you a statistic, Jake, because here is what the leadership of people like Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi, and yes, Mike Pence, over 30 years in this country has led to. A person with a bachelor's degree lives 7 years longer than a person without a bachelor's degree. There are a lot of people who have gotten rich and powerful off of American decline. Some of them have had R's next to their name. Some of them have had D's next to their name. And the first person who I believe is really putting the interests of the American people first is Donald J. Trump. So yes, we're going to be the president and the vice president for all people. The only way to do that is to reject the failed consensus.
And the Democrats will be the president and vice president of none of the people, only those that are of other countries. And the case in point was exactly what we saw for the last 4 years at this point. You're a second-class citizen in your own country under Democrat rule, folks. Let me know what you think about this one in the comment section below. Do you think Jake Tapper won? Do you think JD won? Because look, this was clearly debate. It was not an interview. And I think JD wiped the floor with this guy. He did a phenomenal job. He kept calm. And while Jake Tapper fumbled through his words, lied relentlessly, which is typical from CNN, folks. We'd love to hear about what you have to say about all this in the comment section below. If you think that we deserve your subscription, hit that subscribe button. It's absolutely free. Follow us over at Rumble. Links to everything is in the description below, folks. And I'll see you next time here on The Will Brad Show. Take care, Patriots.